Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. We are a movement of more than 20,000 people here in Israel, including many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense establishment. Thank you so much to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into this briefing, as well as our previous briefings. It is so important to us to be able to share these updates from Israel with you. We were hoping to bring to you a report from the northern border, but because of conditions on the ground here, we're going to have to hold off on that. And instead, we're going to focus a little bit more today on the Gaza border. And I'm very privileged to be joined again by Danny Seaman. And we have a special guest, Rachel, we'll introduce in a few moments. Before we bring in Rachel, Danny, what can you tell us in general about what is happening right now here in Israel?
Well, as we spoke earlier, I feel like I'm the relief pitcher who's come in for Amir, who's on his way to the United States right now. As usual, a lot is going on here. We have several issues. I give it more as a mosaic of things happening, because as the days move forward, we see it's not only in Israel. And this is a much broader issue happening here, that we're just one element of it. And people have to understand this, that this is a major war going on. Israel is one element, but it's all the tentacles of Iran involved in this. So here in Israel, we have, in the Gaza Strip, we have continued motion of the IDF. By the way, a British commander yesterday mentioned that what the IDF is doing, and I think Amir said this yesterday, is unparalleled to any combat conducted in the world. Even the United States in Mosul didn't have this extent of battles underground and destroying terrorist operations as Israel is happening. And the success rate of the IDF right now, keeping both our own casualties down and also civilian casualties on the other side, is unprecedented. So it's a very good maneuver on the part of the IDF. From what I understand from the Prime Minister, actually listening to him the other day, the Prime Minister mentioned that the success here was basically part of an outstanding maneuver on part of the battalion commander that they don't want to elaborate on right now, but he did something there that completely surprised the enemy, and but will probably obviously be heard about later on. So Israel continued with its movement and is undermining and is tearing apart the last bastions of Hamas in the Gaza. At the same time, there's talks going on in Egypt right now with Qatar and Israel. Washington is involved as well, trying to release the hostages. And there's a lot of rumors going on in the media, a lot of things being said. I can tell you from my years working in the Prime Minister's office, sometimes these journalists tend to make up stuff just to show that they're involved in what is happening. Nobody's involved. Nobody knows what's actually going on there. At the moment, the Prime Minister today said very clearly that Israel will not cease at any point not attempt, but the movement to totally annihilate Hamas. So there may be a ceasefire, but it will not be the end of our attempt at destroying Hamas. And at the same time, he also said we will not be releasing prisoners with blood on their hands. So I tend to trust the Prime Minister in this, but I can also say something else on this from my years of experience. Not everything that's being told to the public, and I go back to the time I worked with Prime Minister Shamir, way back then, we're talking about over 30 years now, that Shamir also said, we can't always say everything, and especially when you're in a time of war, you don't want to give anything to the enemy. So I would take everything with a pinch of salt and wait for things to be announced officially. Up until then, everything is speculation. So what I'm saying is not speculation, it's based on past experience. So all these things you're hearing in the news, I would really not trust it at the moment and wait till the final things come out. It doesn't mean that the public, and we'll be discussing this in a few moments with our guests, it doesn't mean that the public can't take action, because there are major things going on here that need to be addressed, and the world needs to understand how the Israeli public feel about these things, because at the end of the day, we're the ones who pay the consequences of what is going on. Israel is continuing its battle with Hamas in Judea and Samaria, in the areas under the Palestinian Authority. They are being harbored by the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria. Last night, there was a major event in Jenin. I'm sure many of you have seen the images coming out that are similar and evoke images from Fauda, the series, which a lot of you watch. I don't like the series. I don't watch it. But apparently, it's given a lot of publicity to Israel. And yesterday, the reality outdid anything that the Hollywood version can do. And there was an incident of capturing 3 Hamas terrorists who've taken refuge in a hospital in Jenin, very similar to what we hear in Gaza going on all the time. But these terrorists were taking refuge in the hospital, planning a October 7th type attack against Israelis along the Green Line, as they call it, with Judea and Samaria. So the IDF was able to thwart that yesterday with getting intelligence and taking immediate action and taking out these terrorists there. There was incidents involving the United States with Iran that I'm sure we're all aware of. Though the Iranians are cleaning their hands from all this, listen, they're playing games with us. They are the ones who fund Hezbollah, they fund Hamas, they fund these Iraqi cronies, they fund the Houthis. They're behind it all. We shouldn't give them a pass because they're saying, oh, no, it's not us. But they're funding these groups. They're training these groups. From the Hamas operatives, terrorists that we took captive, they told us exactly that in their preparation for the October 7th assault on Israel, they were trained in Iran by Iranians. So there should be no surprise about this right now. And hopefully the United States will understand that there's no appeasing them. And there's no, they have to take strict and determined action to stop it now before they get encouraged to continue with their battles. So that's more or less what has been going on in the past 24 hours and issues that we've been addressing and dealing with. Again, it's just a fine touch on a few of the issues.
Danny, thank you so much for that. I want to ask you a hard question. You know, you mentioned so many different facets of this war. I spent most of today in Judea and Samaria in the world of training with these emergency response squads. So when you're living in that world, you think, wow, this is really the next great front. But then, of course, we're still fighting in Gaza. There's activity up north. There's Iran. So what do you think right now, today, this day of the war, is the greatest threat to Israel?
Well, it's obvious the threat is one, Iran. Iran is a threat. They don't hide it. Their cronies, such as Hamas, have said for years. And by the way, it's not only Hamas. The Palestinian Authority that they're trying to impose upon us right now by telling us that the day after they should be the ones responsible for Gaza, they're identifying completely with Hamas, and they're part of it. So I would say there are 2 threats. The physical threat is Iran and its cronies, but the real threat is that if we don't take care of them, if we don't annihilate them, if we don't leave them, because they're already celebrating October 7th is some great day in the annals of Islamic history. We have to make it so that they regret the day that they launched this assault against Israel. And if we don't do that, it's not going to end with Israel. We're the closest to them. It's a jihadist movement against the West. They're not hiding it. I saw this video this week from what's happening in Texas, that there was a jihadist from Azerbaijan, I believe, that was a terrorist that is known. He's crossing the border into the United States. All I can say is to the people here listening to us from Europe or from the United States, don't make the mistake that Israel did. Listen to what they're saying. Don't try to appease them, and don't try to apply our value system on them, that only if we do this, they're being very clear of what they want to do. And now they're penetrating the United States. And after Israel, and they don't have to wait till after the battle here, because we're talking about a population of over 1 billion. And there's several hundreds of millions of jihadists who see their goal right now taking out the West. So we have to address these issues and understand. So just to wrap it up, Iran is the physical threat, the ideological threat, and for Israel in particular, we have to annihilate Hamas. No 2 ways about it, no appeasement.
I want to press on this point before we bring in Rachel, because I think it's super critical. So if Iran is the biggest threat, what are we doing to prepare for Iran? Meaning, when you look at Judea and Samaria, again, very simple. We're worried about a local population threat, so the emergency response teams are preparing. Gaza border, we're fighting Hamas, and we have units down there fighting. The Lebanon border, we're fortifying. What are we doing? If Iran is the greatest threat, what is the state of Israel doing to prepare for that?
Well, we're already engaged in it. The activities now, we tried to delay this for as long as possible. And while we were delaying and talking about the threat that Iran poses, Iran was funding Hamas. And by the way, through Qatar. Qatar is not an innocent bystander either. They're also supportive. And I remember this from my days as the director of the government press op in Israel. They created Al Jazeera. And we know that the Muslim Brotherhood took over Al Jazeera, and completely because the government in Qatar is supportive of this. And when you're part of the Muslim Brotherhood, it's only one extremist goal, which is the world jihad. So we have to realize that they're the threat in this. And so with Iran, what we're doing is fighting right now Hamas, Hezbollah in South Lebanon. There are actions that the government has admitted to going on against the proxies of Iran that have moved in from Afghanistan, from Iraq. People that were trained by the Iranians moved into Syria because the regime in Syria are a minority Alawites, which are also partnered with the Shia, who are the Iranians. So it sounds complex, but it's very simple. They're all under the control of Iran. So there's Israeli activities at least admitted to by the Israeli government. And the prime minister did say last week that we have taken action in Iran recently. So we're also doing that. We have to be very careful because we don't want to, and anybody who knows history knows that it was always the concern of countries around the world not to have more than one front to deal with. So Israel is concentrating right now on the Hamas. And the major goal for Israel at the moment is concentrating on Hamas, finishing them. And then we can no longer stand by and allow these organizations to grow in strength and grow in numbers. And the international community is also going to have to address the threat coming not only to Israel, but to the Western world as well, emanating from Iran.
Thank you. So we're joined by Rachel. And Rachel, I'm apologizing right now. I'm going to butcher your last name. Rachel.
Oh, they made a mistake in my last name right now. Never mind. So Rachel Twizou, because I'm French.
Twito, there you go. Okay.
Twito is good. Yeah.
Rachel Twito. So Rachel, thank you.
The I is missing. I just noticed.
Okay. Okay. We got your name wrong. Apologies. A double apology on that. And
thank you for having me.
It's our great pleasure. So here in Israel, of course, it's so important not just that military officials and generals and colonels are involved in this war effort, but it affects the people of Israel. And when the people of Israel stand up and act, it is so important. And so you're doing that. Danny, why don't you take over here? I'll listen in on a conversation between the two of you on the really important stuff that Rachel is doing.
I'm more than happy to. So people know that Rachel and I had the wonderful opportunity of working together a few years ago in other projects. So when I heard her on the radio this week, down in near the Gaza Strip in Kerem Shalom, where Israeli citizens are gathering right now. And you know what? I'll just leave it to you, Rachel, when you spoke about it earlier. When we were discussing what to talk about, you explained it much better than I could. So please go ahead and tell the viewers here what you're dealing with today.
Okay, so I'll be happy to. First of all, like you said, this war is we are all involved in this war. I mean, the civilians are an active part of that war, not just because we have our soldiers, which are our husbands and our sons and our brothers and our cousins. We are all at war, and we feel this war on all kind of scale. So basically, I today come in front of you as part of the Tzav 9, Tzav 9, which is a reference to the Tzav 8, which is the call-up for duty that reserved military soldiers get when they are called up for war. And the Tzav 9
in Israel. You have to stress that Tzav 8 is
in America. I'm not sure it's Tzav 8. It must be something else for sure. But in Israel, Tzav 8 is really the call up for duty. And we named ourselves this grassroots movement. And in a few minutes, I'll explain in detail a little bit more after that, because this is our reserve duty as civilians. So yeah, this movement is a very new one. It started 10 days ago. We're still in the making. The specificity about this movement is that it's not a right wing, left wing, it's an Israeli wing movement. And it makes us our strength, because when we are united, we always like to say it these days, but it's true. When we are united, we are invincible. And this is the real feeling that we get when we are there in Kerem Shalom. So what would you like to know?
Well, why are you in Kerem Shalom? What's happening there that brought, and just so people understand geographically, it's the furthest point away from Israel along the border with the Gaza Strip. It's the furthest south point. And what is happening there at the moment?
So basically, each day we go there because Israel is passing humanitarian aid. And when I'm saying humanitarian aid, it's more than 100 convoys and trucks signed up and packed up by UNRWA, the same organization who is involved in the massacres of the 7th of October. I call it the Hamas branch of the UN because this is what it is.
For those who are watching who haven't heard yet, or haven't been caught up with the news, UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Service specifically for Palestinians. Every other refugee cause around the world has another UN organization that deals with them. The only ones that have a separate are the Arabs, who have had this since 1948, and they have been working in Gaza. And we found out that they've been collaborating with Hamas, not only giving them refuge, using their schools, their hospitals, their facilities to fire missiles against Israel, to store weapons against Israel, but at least 12 of them were actively involved on the October 7th atrocities against Israel.
So let me correct you, because the more updated number that we have now is 1 out of 10 of UNRWA employees are involved with terror attacks and the 7th of October.
12 have been apprehended by Israel.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, this is something that Israel has known for a long time, and we've been dealing with UNRWA and the fact that it's kind of a discrepancy with the right course of history. You have had a long history, a lot of refugees. Everybody has been a refugee, especially Jews, by the way. But we know that refugees, because war happened all the time, for all refugees except UNRWA for Palestinians, they have one agency for everybody else. But for Palestinians, for some reason, there is one specific. I think it would be a nice subject for another panel webinar, because it's a really big subject. But to go back to our subject, so basically this is aid that goes directly to the hands of Hamas. This information does not come from Israeli media. This information goes directly from Al Jazeera, for example, who we could see, maybe a lot of you have seen this, these videos of trucks being secured by Hamas militants, combatants with arms and weapons. So what they do is easy. They go to inspection because Israel asked, and we pressured, by the way, the civilians. We put pressure on our government to ask and require that these trucks would be, of course, checked by us. So they are brought up.
Let me just add here that the aid going in was part of a previous agreement when they freed the several dozen of our hostages. Was back in December. Israel agreed that this would go into the civilians there. And what happened was, since it's going in that location, we're still under the Hamas control, they immediately took over this. And part of the agreement with
UNRWA,
Israel,
again, UNRWA and Hamas.
Exactly. And part of the agreement was that they would make sure that it goes to the population and not to, amongst other things that they promised us, such as information about the other hostages that we never received, and medical aid that was given just a few weeks ago that was never transferred to the Israeli. So all these things are happening in total violation of the agreements that have already been agreed upon with Israel.
Right. And moreover, since they get this aid to their hands, they resell it to Palestinians in Gaza at the higher price. They keep it for themselves, of course, for their soldiers. And with the fuel that we said we would not pass, but we caved into international pressure, it also maintains the tunnels, the electricity, the oxygen,
Right.
tunnels,
Anything that we would have wanted to use
infrastructures.
to get them to get out of those tunnels. And by the way,
Keep them.
locations where we're physically in, such as Khan Yunis in the past 2 weeks, Khan Yunis, they are coming out like rats from the underground. They're coming out of those tunnels, and that gives us the ability to engage them in combat and get rid of them. But here, what is happening, UNRWA is responsible for this, and we already know that they're collaborators with Hamas, and they're transferring this thing. So in a sense, it's affecting Israel's ability to even end the war quicker, not to mention resolve the suffering of those Palestinians who've been. So that's part of the problem there. So you guys are addressing this, and what are you physically doing?
So first of all, I'd like to mention that we are not just civilians. We have family of hostages who are with us. We have people who have their sons fighting right now in Gaza. We have people of newest people from bereaved family, unfortunately, who lost their children in Gaza. And we are very united in that cause. So we go each day, early morning, and now the police and the army is prepared for our venue because we go there every day. And we basically stop, and we are there at the frontier, at the border, and we're there, and we are impeaching them. We're not letting them in. We succeeded. We managed to do it in 5 days. In the first 5 days, we managed to stop these convoys. Yesterday, we failed. They managed to pass through us and to pass 130 convoys.
But you had success. You had success in preventing this.
Had success, yeah. But yesterday or the day before, Netanyahu requested the army, and we heard from soldiers that the Ramatkal, the chief of staff, he came himself there to make sure that the soldiers were prepared for us. It's okay. We know that they do their duty. They obey to orders. But we do our duty too, and they know that we do this for them. So we have their sympathy. We don't use violence, and they don't use violence either. We really try to do it in a friendly way, but we really want to put that point out. Israelis, left, right, center, women, children, elderly, disabled people. I saw there disabled people who went there despite the difficulty. And if you ever went there, you know that it's not the easiest way, the easiest location to go. But we really do that because we need to send that message also outside. We know and we feel Israelis, and I speak for myself, but I'm sure that many people will recognize themselves in my message, is that while we need and we love and we appreciate the American support, and we need it because we're fighting a war that is, like you said earlier, we are the first state, but we want to be the last. We are the first, and the West is the next. We really believe that because it's true. But at the same time, we feel that pressure was put on Israel, and we caved in to that pressure. So Netanyahu does his job. The government does what it can. It will not approve our doing because they need to keep a facade and to keep a face. They're doing their jobs. We're doing our job, and we want to make sure. We want to make sure that just one last thing. We want to make sure that while we trust our government to lead us to victory, we also need to be, like we say in Hebrew, with a hand here to be sure that we still are in touch with our moral, our ethics, and what's good for our people that are still hostages, and the combatants, our fighters, our sons and soldiers that are there right now.
So what I wanted to stress is that you did mention this. This is nonviolent.
Right.
You're
Absolutely.
just standing there blocking the route.
With flags, singing songs, bringing food to the soldiers. We did have our leader, one of the leader, how do you say it? משתתפים.
Participants, leading
participants, yes. We did have him arrested for no reason. He just got there, and because he was the main one who brought everybody, because like you said, they put some roadblocks everywhere. So we need to find ways to get, but we still managed to do it. So yesterday we failed. Today we managed to block Kerem Shalom a little bit, but we mainly blocked the Nitzana border checkpoint,
which is closer to the.
And they moved, since they knew that we were coming to Kerem Shalom, they moved the trucks toward Nitzana, but we were prepared for Nitzana today. And I can give you a spoiler alert: we are preparing something, a surprise for them also tomorrow. So we won't stop. We have hostages there. We want them home. And we know that, again, this aid is not going to the civilian population. In the most part, it gets to Hamas, and we want it to stop.
And a number of Israelis joining you has been growing in the past few days?
Our WhatsApp groups are full. We need to open again and again, and we have only good feedback and people, telling us, good job, continue. I want to go too. How do I do that? That's what we do.
And before we end here, is there anything our viewers can help? Is there a way? Is there anything they can assist you with?
Listen, we are facing an unprecedented situation in Israel. It's a very difficult time. What we ask mainly from the people living in the US is to continue to support us morally. It gives us strength, but also to your congressperson, if you are in touch, because basically people there don't know what's going on here. And like you said earlier, if we knew that this aid goes effectively to the civilians in Gaza, we don't want to starve people. This is not what we want to do. We just want to be sure that we're not in this cycle of UNRWA again and again. And there's no effective way of making sure that this aid goes to the civilians in Gaza. It goes to the Hamas. And this is a never-ending cycle. How do you want to end a war if we keep nurturing them?
So that's
the message to the Congress would be, like I said, don't dismantle UNRWA. First of all, you need to dismantle UNRWA. So I know that the US was the first, one of the first countries to freeze the financing of UNRWA, which is a good thing. We need to push to that on the broader scale. But specifically, we need to stop using UNRWA as a legitimate part of this. They are part of the problem. They're not part of the solution.
Okay, we're reaching the end of our broadcast. I'll turn it back over to you, Moshe.
Danny and Rachel, really thank you so much for this. This is just such a great example that when you hear about the activists and the protesters at the Keren Shalom crossing, and you hear about the arrests and blocking aid, you think about monsters. And then, Rachel, we meet you, and you're anything but a monster, and you're sharing with us. You're doing it in a very peaceful way. And as you noted, you're not looking to clash with the soldiers.
Absolutely not. We are for our soldiers. We love them, and they know that.
Right. And I think this is eye-opening for us to really get an active view about how we need to hear from the people on the ground and see what's happening and not trust everything we read in the way it's portrayed. And I hope you're successful in really bringing awareness about this issue.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, Tzav 9.
Absolutely, Tzav 9. Thank you so much. And the Tzav 9 is for all civilians worldwide, including Americans.
If you're in Israel, it's even better. You can join us. We need everybody.
Right. Can you spell it for them so they know what Tzav 9 is?
TZAV 9.
Z is Z for Americans.
Sorry, I'm French.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters. We'll be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.